Yeah, you've raised a good point there, Rob. Ecuador traditionally and in the past has had a bad rap, and I know the media has probably sensationalized some of the incidents that have happened in country in the last 12 to 18 months. But the current government, President Noboa was elected in late last year, and he got up and he presented at PDAC in March this year. For him, KPIs for his ministers, particularly environmental ministers, are approvals, permits for progressing for both exploration and mining. So, the government do see mining as a big part of the future for Ecuador. They do see it as part of their strategy to revitalise the economy. Mining would represent, great employment for their people. As I said before, they're very technical, they're very well-educated people in Ecuador. There's just not a lot of opportunities for employment there. So the government is seeking industries to fill that employment gap, and mining represents that. London Gold have done a great job with the Fruta del Norte gold mine. They represent within the top 10 of the GDP for income for the Ecuadorian government. So the government understand what mining, can do for the economy there, and they're doing everything within their power to assist, and encourage foreign investment into exploration and mining. They're going so far as to enter into exploration and mining investment agreements and protection agreements with companies in country. So most recently, I think it's about $3.5 billion that the Ecuadorian government has guaranteed SolGold for their Cascabel project, to match that in terms of that foreign investment. So yeah, there's good support from the government there, going forward.
I think the hardest part and the part that continues to surprise Ross on a regular basis is really the valuation of these junior developers. I updated this stat recently. Gold's up literally 100% since our first resource in January 2017 that we put that out. So gold's up 100%. Our market cap is flat. Sitting here in 2024, and that's inclusive of all the fundraisers we've done during that period of time. We've obviously put out 3 economic studies. We've advanced the project a ton. Copper obviously is also 20% of our mix, is I think up maybe 60 or 70% during that time. So to be sitting here at kind of a $200 million round number Canadian valuation, when you've got 20 million ounces of gold in the ground, and a project that really over the last call it 6 months here, on paper, MPV5 has gone up well over 50% in value, and not seen any of that trickle down to the equity price. It's pretty challenging. We know we're in the boring part of it, where you're between PFS and feasibility, and there's not a lot of news flow. But you would think you'd see some of that, or more credit to that, into the stock price. And it really just kind of speaks to the financeability, because I think if you look historically, every company of our stage probably tries to dual track, building it or selling it. And our group's a little bit different.
So we've had to go through a process that's basically taken 2 years of studying the flora and fauna, the local habitats, to put together a drilling program that minimizes our impacts on that environment, to be able to get a drilling permit. Now, that process has taken 2 years and cost quite a bit of money. So I think one of the key reasons other juniors haven't got involved is just that sort of timeline isn't really feasible for a company that's not got sufficient funding and runway to do that. And that kind of feeds into where Kings Rose has a bit of a point of difference in the market. We have this significant cash position for an explorer. I think it'd be hard pushed to find any exploration company globally with a similar amount of money at the stage that we're at with early stage projects. And so that allows us to go into areas that might take a bit longer, that might have various other sort of, as we call it, above ground challenges, but gives us access to deposit opportunities that could be really, really exceptional. And that's the thing with Pennycat. So we've got over 100 historical drill holes that we know about into the deposit. 99 of them hit mineralization. That's how consistent it is. There's 25 kilometers of mineralized strike length at surface of high grade, actually some of the highest grades in the world for PGEs. And yeah, we really see the opportunity to build a 5 to 10 million ounce plus resource there once we get drilling.
The demand for critical metals has really spurred this introduction, I think, and it's spurred a need for graduates who are familiar with responsible mining practices. And I suppose also with critical metals, we know we all work for one of the world's most essential industries. And our industry probably has never been as vital as it is now. It's crucial to the energy transition, the green economy. That was recognised by the university as well as the government. And within the university, there was a strategy to increase the number of students on engineering courses generally by our colleagues in the Department of Engineering. And that strategy is about sort of new programs. And we saw this as an opportunity really to start this sort of conversation about trying to reintroduce mining with all these other sort of things that were going on. And by doing it as part of this strategy, it has obviously benefits because we can work closer with our colleagues in engineering in many of the sort of core engineering modules. And so, there'll be new engineering programs both here on our campus in Penryn, but also at the campus in Exeter. And so that opportunity was there to seriously consider this, and we made a case to the university, and it's been part of that.
And we kept looking at this and going, but there's something unusual going on here. You've got 40 kilometers of strike of mineralization. Surely there's a way we can try and capture the whole target. And just to give you an idea of scale, we've got over 100 million tons at 0.5% in here when you do the model work. So we started exploring a bit down the in situ copper recovery route. And I think the other thing that's key is, this is what you need to sort of satisfy, is the mineralization leachable? Well, yes, we've got chalcocite, it's leachable. We've done some early met testing and proven it. It's also super fine grained. And it's all hosted in fractures along this continuous structure. And then the next question is it below the water table? Now, immediately you have a contradiction in terms of geology. Your oxidized zone is usually above your water table. So we actually have chalcocite below the water table for most of the ore body, which means you can actually inject and recover into it. And then probably the $1 million question is, do you have the right sort of fracture architecture running along there so you can control your fluid flow in the mineralization itself? And, we originally did a lot of desktop work. We did some AI work, which was quite fun, just sort of going through the core and picking out fracture zones automatically and then going to the core and logging it and checking it.
If you talk to any, sort of when I say hairy old geologists, I mean people in their sort of 60s or so, they will get all misty-eyed when they talk about Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is incredibly prospective for gold, but because of the difficulties in the country over the last, 40 years or so, there's been virtually no modern exploration at all. People who know Zimbabwe know that there's gold there in big deposits, and quite good deposits, but no one's ever really bothered to get into it. So it's pretty much elephant country, which has not had Zimbabwe's gold endowment been somewhere else, anywhere else in the world, it would have been exploited years ago. So Zimbabwe is just like a time capsule which hasn't been exploited. People in the game know that, but the reason why we can play in Zimbabwe, we're very comfortable there, is that over the course of the last couple of decades, we've actually now got to grips with how to do business there. I guess we'll talk in a bit more detail about the challenges and the difficulties of working in Zimbabwe. The biggest challenge by far is navigating the very complex, arcane, Byzantine, bureaucratic and administrative system. And frankly, if you turn up there, it doesn't matter who you are, if you're a barrack or a big company and you turn up in Zim, you just will struggle to make the system work. And we've been there long enough and we know there's nothing untoward about it. I'm not for a minute talking about sort of corruption or greasing palms. It's just you've got to be able to press the buttons in the right order to get the outcomes that you need to run the business. And we're very good at that.
So I think in this next 5 to 15 year period, we have a real perfect storm of significant underinvestment in copper projects and lack of new supply coming on, and a new wave of new demand, which complements the old world Dr. Copper sources of demand, which are very much the traditional economy. And in that combination, there is a serious risk of a sudden and I think very steep rise in global copper prices as the demand significantly outstrips the supply. I think the other challenge is very few new copper mines being built. There are a couple of high profile, Kamoa-Kakula, remarkable success. There's been Quebrada Blanca here, QB2 here, which not such a great success, but is now in production and producing. But there have been very few new copper projects. And in fact, the vast majority of copper projects, especially in Chile, the largest producer, are very, very old. And what we're seeing is mines getting deeper, grades falling, recoveries falling, and operating costs going up. And that can only mean that if we want to keep these mines in production, the copper price has to go up.
We're very lucky that East African graphite, which is where we are, is regarded as some of the highest quality graphite in the world. So we've landed up in a situation where we have an end product quality which is, and it was very high, and we've proven this time and again with metallurgical testing in laboratories in Canada, South Africa, Australia, and China, and the United States. And then we've done bulk sample testing, and literally we've just finished a 600-ton bulk sample test program. So the end users can actually see that we can still deliver the same high quality, not just on a couple of kgs in a lab, but in something that's of that sort of commercial scale. So I think there's going to be problems in terms of supply. And I think that everybody is saying the same thing, that I think the last Benchmark Minerals Intelligence document I saw said that there need to be something like 30 to 50, maybe even more, new mines opening before 2030. And I just cannot see even a fraction of that occurring.
We're in this energy transition. We're electrifying the global economy. And, every day I think we see why this is more and more important as we see climate change wreaking havoc on the earth. And so what we see is approximately 30% of emissions, global emissions, are from the transportation industry, or the sector, I should say. So, the transition to electric vehicles is an important one to fight this climate change, to enter this new phase. And also globally, there's been a lot more geopolitical risk. There's a lot more tensions with the United States and China, as a lot of people fear the worst. And part of that has been this escalation for critical materials. China has been very aggressive in onshoring producing and manufacturing critical materials essential to the EV transitions, from lithium, but also graphite and cobalt. And the US has been asleep at the wheel for a couple of few decades now. And we see the importance for now onshoring this manufacturing ability. The US has a lot of reserves of lithium. Some studies say up to, the fourth largest reserves in the world, 17% of the global market. So it's important that we do things here in the US for the security of our energy transition, for the security of our nation, the security of the military, who's largely dependent on handheld electronic devices. So it's important that we bring these jobs home, we set up more manufacturing in here, and work with building a resilient American supply chain.